Okay.
My name is Abu Shaw, originally from Sierra Leone, West Africa. Having resided in the United States for over 20 years now. I have embraced this country as my second home. I have a deep passion for learning and engaging in discussions that revolve around the topic related to Africa. Exploring and sharing knowledge about the diverse culture and history of Africa brings me joy. Allow me to introduce Hakeem Bell, who is here today, who is here with me today. Hakeem has consistently exemplified a courageous and dedicated spirit, always stepping up to the front lines. I remember him from our high school days when he fearlessly stood on the front line, protecting us and inspiring us as a natural leader. Continuing his unwavering commitment to safeguarding our nation, Hakeem served in the U.S. Army, once again placing himself on the front line to protect us. Today we are here to discuss the future of Africa and the intersection of globalization and decentralization. So Hakeem, I'd like to ask you about your early life and and how you got into the military. We can start off like that just to get a bit of a background on you.
I went to college. To be honest, I didn't think college was for me. Everybody just encouraged me to go to college because I did well academically within school. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. It's fun. I played a year of college football. Then after that, I didn't know what I was going to do. To be honest, part of the reason I joined the military is somebody said I couldn't. I like a challenge. I'm hard-headed, so.
Oh really? Was this person in school with you or?
Yeah, they were in college with me. He was joining, and he made a remark that I was too fat. I can never enlist. So I was like, oh.
Oh wow. And I guess you didn't take that like.
No, I didn't take that. You know, it seemed like a good challenge. I had nothing else I wanted to do. I dedicated so much time to athletics. It seemed like, I kind of just didn't want to waste that. All the training I put in the gym and whatnot. So it's like, I also joined the military, so kind of felt like I didn't waste my time.
Right. I think I remember you doing really well in the weight room. I think you were probably very high on like one of the heaviest squatters, I think, for us.
Yeah. We worked hard. We actually managed 1,000-pound club.
Wow, you see that?
yeah, high school.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? Yeah. High schoolers, 1,000 pounds. Can you get a little bit into your experience while you were serving?
It was a culture shock for me. It definitely made me realize that I thought I knew what hard work was, but I really didn't know what hard work was until I joined the military. Just the level of dedication and commitment to something that people say they want, but you have to kind of be obsessive in nature about it. I enjoyed my time in the military. I wasn't the best soldier, I wasn't super badass, but I learned a lot, made a lot of great friends on the way, had great mentors. Like, I'm in real estate now. Sergeant Alvarez, he did that, like he gave me step-by-step instructions. A lot of times people sell that information, right? Even if you're friends, they have to book a consultation, you have to pay for it. He gave me a step-by-step instruction on how to do the housing stuff I'm in now, right? So the military definitely changed my life for the better. A lot of people talk down on the military, but you get out of it what you put in.
So this friend, is this somebody you met while you were serving, or?
Oh yeah, somebody I met while I was serving.
Oh wow! And I guess you guys discharged together?
No, Sergeant Alvarez is still in.
He's still in. Okay.
Yeah, he's actually a Ranger, TAD, soccer school, all that badass shit.
Okay. And so I guess you still stay in contact with him.
Oh yeah, I still stay in contact with all my military friends.
So he's still like your active mentor. That's awesome. So how did the military shape your worldview? Let's say.
Shaped my worldview because I was very, very liberal going into the military, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of brought me more towards the center and gave me a broader understanding of what the world actually is, that there really is no right or wrong answer. Mm-hmm. Right? Both people could be right. The world's just unfair at times,
Yeah, that's when you say that, it's very interesting. There is a gray area, And two things, some like I remember in the past, when in discussions people would say if you bring up a topic, right, as people tend to just assume that there can only be one way, right, and then if you say have a point or stand on the opposite side, or you're trying to fit that in, they'll say that's you're contradicting yourself, or but two statements can actually be true.
Yeah.
It's every time you look at it. I mean, you know what I mean. But yeah, that's very interesting to say that.
A good example that I actually read in the book is both statements could be true. Is having an exorbitant amount of wealth is a bad thing, but at the same time, people truly don't want equality. Like if you broke up all the money in the world evenly, it'd be about $35,000 a year for everybody. That would benefit billions of people. But how many people in first world countries are like, I'm fine making $60 an hour for the rest of my life?
Yeah, not much. I don't think.
Right, so it's all good until you actually do the math and you're like, so people don't really truly understand the complexities of the things that they're asking.
And then, I was going to say, it kind of depends where you're living too. That $35,000 a year or whatever can be nice, and then if you're saying somewhere else, it probably can't even get you by.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in New York City, like who's gonna get by with $35,000 a year?
Yeah, New York, California, exactly. You're not getting by 35.
But okay, so how did that kind of compare, say, your current perspective on globalization and decentralization?
It's complicated. Before, I blamed globalization for basically destroying the American workforce. A lot of things that were promised to our generation we didn't have access to because of globalization. Bethel Steel, for example, easy job. All you have to do is graduate high school. You get a job at Bethel Steel. You made enough money, your wife could stay at home. You could afford a summer home on the Jersey Shore and buy a new car.
And pay for your kids' college.
And pay for your kids' college. Right? Globalization took that away from the area and hurt a lot of people. But I also can't be hypocritical because China bought 1 billion people out of poverty. Right? Over 5 billion people now have access to electricity, and part of that is because of globalization and our jobs going overseas.
You made a good point. What about your perspective on the decentralization? I mean, I guess it all kind of ties in, but if you want to highlight that or just what let's move on.
Now, the decentralization, I feel, is a necessary evil because it gives more opportunity for others and produces better competition within the open market, I feel.
True.
Or markets in general. Competition is great. Part of the reason I feel we have great income inequality nowadays is the lack of competition. Right? We think we have choices in various products and things like that, but we really don't. So it's just an illusion. I feel decentralization will help bring about greater competition. On the negative aspect, though, it is harder to take risks and to push technology forward without a centralized force.
Right. Yeah.
In order to push technology, you need centralized resources.
Right.
And
I mean, and then the more people you have, say, working on a specific tech, the better options you get. Maybe you get cheaper prices out of that and stuff like that. I want to dive into this globalization topic. I took note of it when I was watching your pod with Eric Ayers, and you guys briefly brought it up, but I thought it was such an interesting topic to even dive deeper into. I'm just going to quickly define globalization for us to kind of stay on topic. Globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of countries and their economy, culture, societies, technologies, like we're talking about, on a global scale. It is driven by achievements in transportation, communication, and information technology, which make it easier for people, goods, services, and ideas to flow across borders. So, with that being said, So let's kind of tie this in with Africa now. So like, how do you perceive globalization and its effects on Africa particularly?
Now it's a double-edged sword. I'm not a native myself, so it's kind of difficult, but on paperwork-wise, you gotta take it to that. Globalization has definitely helped countries like Nigeria, although it doesn't have full access on its oil resources. Globalization, the movement of food, the ability to outsource certain things like that so that Nigeria can focus more on their palm oil fields and their peanut fields, bringing more money into the community. People have gained more money year after year in Nigeria thanks to the loans given by the Chinese. But, you're also losing a bit of yourself, a little part of your culture. You're giving up control to foreign entities, and that's something that a lot of African nations try to move away from, right? It's just colonization with extra steps, right? Yes, you're benefiting from technology, fresh water, electricity, but it's still colonization. You're just getting better perks now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's unfortunate.
Right.
And also, with the war in Ukraine, a lot of countries in Africa are suffering from food shortages because of globalization. The dependency on another nation to feed you that's one thing Americans take for granted. We don't have, everything is an overabundance over here in terms of resources, so we don't have to depend on other nations for food. But the war in Ukraine, COVID, half the world's nations, especially a lot of Eastern African nations, couldn't really feed themselves because they depend on other nations for grain.
Yeah. From what I've been hearing, this whole war that's going on in Ukraine, I guess Ukraine was one of the biggest grain providers, and also even Russia is a grain provider as well. But with the war going on, with the sanctions and all that, it makes the trade very difficult, and if not, even more expensive now. To get those resources out that people need and actually was dependent on. So I mean, you kind of, I would say, so is there, like, do you see any pros to globalization? Globalization? Is there any pros to it?
One, I'd say culture. Culture spreads. The culture fluidity that we have in the world today would not be possible without globalization. Like Afro beats are taking over the world right now. Like I can't step 2 feet without hearing last somewhere. But things like that wouldn't have been possible without globalization.
Yeah.
So
born to board, right?
Yeah. So the merging of cultures, that is nice. Just music and food that travel all across the world. That is in part thanks to globalization. Right?
Yeah. Facts. Do you have any particular con that makes like the number one on the list for you?
I think it makes you dependent on others, especially the old world powers who work in their own best interest. And there's a tinge of racism there, even if they don't acknowledge it. For example, America is the way it is because of interconnected trade. We were cut off from the world and isolated, so we were forced to trade within the states, which made our economy great. India is suffering from that because a lot of India still has a hard time with inter-country trade, right? So, and I feel like Africa is suffering from that as well. It would make countries like Ghana ship more products to France than they do to other African countries. Stuff like that needs to be in-house. That's how their continent as a whole could grow. You need a major highway that stretches all the way from Sierra Leone down to South Africa. Like you need something like that. That interconnectedness would bring the continent together, and that would also, I'd say that also stop gun violence. Right? A lot of people like to make it a racial issue, a poverty issue, but the same issues exist in Eastern Europe, right?
Right.
They're not really interconnected like Western Europe, and that leads to more violence.
Right. But wouldn't you say violence and ties into poverty as well?
Yes.
Because go ahead. If you wanna.
Oh no, you're definitely right, but it's a chicken or the egg thing. Like I say, it reminds me it's analogous to Europe, Eastern Europe, right? If the violence stopped, well, they made more money, and if they made more money, would the violence stop? So you don't know. It's hard, right? You have to tackle both problems simultaneously, not just one at a time.
Sure. Great. I mean, I agree with most of those points. So there's no counter thing here. Let's dive into the decentralization parts of this topic and its impact on Africa. So, quick definition that I kind of came across. Decentralization refers to the distribution of power, authority, decision making, resources from central authority to lower levels of organizations, government, or society. It involves the transfer of responsibilities and decision-making powers to local regional entities, giving them general autonomy and control over their own affairs. The whole decision-making and and especially when it comes to currency, is really one of the main reasons why I say I'm an advocate for decentralization. But let's continue here. So I would like to ask you your perspective on decentralization and its effects on Africa.
Well, that is very interesting, right? Decentralization is both a good and bad thing, I think, for the continent. A good thing, it provides better autonomy, and Africans know what's best for Africa, right? How to better utilize their resources.
Right.
It's a bad thing in the case that the lines were drawn wrong, right? Certain groups of people shouldn't be living together. So with decentralization, there's no strong overarching force to bring these certain groups together. And I'm wondering, will that lead to civil wars or a redrawing of the lines? You know? But I'm definitely for decentralization for the entire world, because the current system just hasn't been working, and there hasn't been a redistribution of resources as it should. Corporations are stealing from all of us. Decentralization will help bring back power so that you can better allocate your resources and do things better.
Right, especially to that individual, living anywhere in the world, instead of bigger corporations just using their money to bully us little guys.
Yes.
And that's what's really going on. You know what I mean?
And it's just bad ways. You don't have to do everything the right way, right? Decentralization will bring about new and fresh ideas for problems that we all have, but we all think a certain way because of one centralized force. So we're an engineering society, we can engineer our way out of problems, but there's different ways to solve problems.
Right.
And since we all think the same because of just a globalized, centralized system now, decentralization will bring up autonomous agencies, smaller regional people having power, which would lead to a diversity of ideas.
Right. One of the things I like to bring up is is kind of what's currently like the current affairs right now in Africa that's going on. A lot of the AU, the African Union, they're fighting for more seats in NATO or the European Union, with also America involved, and I think even also China. But so on this global stage, in the past, say the West really has been deciding most of Africa's fate when it comes to say their currencies. Most African countries, their currencies are being printed overseas by their previous colonial masters.
Especially what France is doing, it's interesting.
France is France. I think France is like they for whatever reason they don't want to let go of Africa.
No.
I think Britain. I'll give Britain credit. They have kind of almost removed themselves from colonial times. But to be honest, France, I don't think have moved an inch.
No.
Since colonial times,
they don't fancy it up, but no, France very still much has their colonies. It feels like
it really does. They still dictate literally almost everything for their previous colony that they supposedly gave independence to. You know what I mean? It's sad, but I think France is definitely one of the worst, Western nations that's heavily involved in Africa. But let's not make this about France. But that's what I was going to say. So that's one thing Africa is fighting for, is to have more seats within these within these organizations where whenever there's a vote going on, they can also vote for or against whatever the topic is at hand. You know, and I think it's a good thing, but they've been getting a lot of pushback saying, you know, and you know, the, what you call them, really, it's the whole, you know, like, I forgot what this agency is called, but the European Unions with America involved, is it, I guess, NATO, really, you know, like, especially when it comes to dealing with issues within Africa, like the whole thing with, Gaddafi. You know, African countries really wanted to handle that whole situation themselves, but they were blocked. Yes. You know, like there were, from what I heard, you know, there were few head of states actually traveling to Libya to have a discussion with Gaddafi, but they were blocked from NATO saying go back within African soil. Isn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, and I mean, whatever Gaddafi did or didn't do, Africans actually feel like it should have been handled by them. If it was either arresting him or putting him in jail, or whatever his sentence would have turned out to be, they actually wanted to make that decision, not outside.
Yeah, not some foreign power.
Right. Yeah. You know, is that? Do you think that's too much to ask for?
No, that's not too much to ask for.
That's not too much to ask for. Like those are simple, basic things. And even the other thing I don't like is the control of currencies. You know what I mean? Like for an example, I know France definitely still prints their previous colonial countries' currencies. And the issue with that is, if France is already printing your money for you, you have to pay that at a cost to print your money. So your money is already starting at a devalue.
Exactly.
Because somebody's money. Yeah,
it makes no sense.
You're paying for paper, really. That's what it is. You know, I mean, there's people in Africa that have that skill, you know, to print money and make that product. There's money to put out there. There's people that are capable of doing that, but the reason why they can't is because of the whole laws that they sat down and wrote down in that whole Berlin conference when they were distributing Africa during colonial times. Those laws still apply today, that they can't trade with neighbors. They can't print their own money. Mm-hmm. You know, so all that stuff is still being practiced, even though supposedly they gave independence to Africa. You know, and I don't know. I'm sure you heard of Bitcoin and the whole cryptocurrency. Yeah. I think that's going to play it's going to be a big game changer within Africa. But for whatever reason, these people are not even jumping on this opportunity of cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. You know, cryptocurrency removes the whole, you know, like a bank or somebody controlling your rates or whatever it is. It makes it's all digitalized. It's all computer. You know what I'm saying? But I don't. Why do you think African nations are not jumping on this opportunity of cryptocurrency?
Because you lose money, it's very volatile. I lost like $4,000 in crypto, I'm not gonna lie. Okay. Right? So it's very volatile, it's very difficult, and they're just not there yet. Like I said, it's various steps. I don't think officially there's any third world countries on the continent anymore, right? Everybody has access to some form of electricity according to the UN. Yeah. So I think as things go on, it'll be better. China's still trying to figure out their currency. Do they devalue it? Do they value it? When we're in a trade economy, it's very difficult. Mm-hmm. France is just holding them hostage, but even if France wasn't holding half the continent hostage, it'd still be difficult. That's why I feel Gaddafi was right in his version of their own currency. No country would be able to do it alone. It would have to be a culmination of countries backed by resources that are prevalent in Africa, like oil or gold. Or even somebody said, laughing, I have it based off of chocolate, because the chocolate rates are very stable. And a lot of Western African countries grow a lot of chocolate, so right, there's various options. However, that's just a tough thing to overcome. Not even Middle Eastern nations with tons of money are able to break the global financial market when it comes to currency.
but they at least control their own currency. They at least print their own money. At least from what I understand.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, yeah, like we kind of went away from money being backed by oil, but at the end of the day, they're still one of the biggest oil producers. So
the IMF does control a lot of smaller, rich Middle Eastern countries. They do control their financial system and their monetary system. I think it's going to get better though over time. It's projecting well, especially with the rise in tourism. That'll also help, right? It's kind of harder for foreign countries to manipulate that system, and there's so many foreign countries.
Yeah, where individuals are going to and you know, interacting with the locals.
Yeah, they're spending their money, so it's harder to manipulate, you know, because you're going to have stable exchange rates, right? Especially with the rise of tourism in all over Africa. I think
I'm really
Zanzibar,
happy.
Tanzania. I think Tanzania is rated the #1 tourist destination in 2023, right? So, you know, things like that, I feel are helping.
Yeah, definitely.
Push things forward.
It is. I know the locals love it, you know, especially when they get people from America coming by because, you know, you're coming with that dollar.
Yeah, you know, the same thing
yeah, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing that, especially us here in the US and Black Americans, that now, current time, we're more open actually to travel to Africa. And explore those ideas, because
before
I think in the
past,
past,
I really knew, like, you know, I didn't know it was options. I didn't know there was resorts and stuff like that. It's very stereotypical, but until, you know, internet, TikTok, stuff like that, like, oh, it looks fun, I'd like to go there, but that's not the perception of the content we're living growing up.
That's the beauty of the internet, you know. It really opening up a lot of our eyes to see that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of poverty in Africa, but there's also nice areas that you can go and have a good time and be safe.
You know? And there's poverty everywhere. Imagine if America only showed pictures of Detroit and West Virginia. Like, oh, that's a third world derelict place. Like, if people only saw West Virginia, or like Kensington, Philly. Like, can you imagine? We just don't show our bad parts, you know? Yeah. But it's definitely true. There's bad parts everywhere and there's nice parts everywhere.
Yeah. And the whole thing with decentralization too, you know, I think it's gonna even take more of an effect where when more individuals take control of, say, like their communities, because they would have the chance to actually portray, you know, what they want, instead of having to rely on big media of just doing like a quick run of the news, or this much people died today, and because it was from terrorism or this and that, or this building got blew up, and that's all they cover. They never cover, you know, like a nice event or like a nice say even a holiday that might be different from what we celebrate here.
Even people, the media, like, there's people in the world not going to say things are perfect, but this is the best it's ever been to be alive. Like, rape, murder, wars are at an all-time low across the globe, like across the world. This is the most peaceful it's ever been, and people just aren't happy. We're the saddest we've been because it's just perception.
It's crazy, right?
Less people die from starvation. You're less likely to die from violence. Like, across the world, across the board, it's just we're inundated with negativity on such a regular basis. We think the world's terrible. Really, most of the world's problems right now is just not enough allocation resources, right? Like, I would say, right? But it's not. Things are definitely getting better. We just don't take the time to actually appreciate.
Acknowledge that. I definitely agree to that. I mean, from history, I'm sure you're a history guy. Like, the violence, you know, like, say a couple hundred years ago, even, is crazy. You know, people, like, it wasn't people didn't have to think twice of killing you if they disagree or whatever. You know what I mean? But now it's not as easy to just kill somebody because I don't agree with them.
Exactly.
You know,
I challenge you to a duel and shoot you in the street.
So yeah, definitely, the world is definitely a safer place. But I do agree with you too. Like, we're still not happy, or we're still not as happy as, say, you know what I mean? Like, the world is a better place, but we're not as equally happy as we should be. It's almost like we're more miserable than we are today than what people actually who lived in those terrible times were. I don't understand why, but yeah. Let's just move on here. So So, do you want to highlight like potential benefits of decentralization? Maybe give us one or two that can lead to like more autonomy for African countries, particularly.
I'd say a benefit of decentralization is just control over resources, right?
Yeah.
Like I heard the other day, various countries were, since the war in Ukraine, they had better autonomy in negotiation of just various foods and resources.
Since the war?
Yeah, since the war, right? There's a shortage of grain throughout the world. They're in better autonomy, right? I guess America is dealing with what they have to deal with. China's dealing with what they have to deal with. The start of decentralization.
Mm-hmm.
So these countries were had better opportunities. I don't know if you're familiar, but when America gives out money, there's usually stipulations attached when we give out aid, right? They were able to get various aid packages without any American strings attached this time.
Ukraine.
Yeah, because of the war in Ukraine and the decentralization process that's happening around the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Do you think if it was I mean look at let's highlight even I don't know if you heard, but also in Sudan there's an unrest where there's you have two big military heads or chief in commands like going at it, fighting each other. So there is a current civil war going on in Sudan, but it definitely I don't think got the same attention as Ukraine got in the beginning. So I mean, give credit to say other nations. Other nations have been trying to bring peace and trying to push for the end of the conflict. But my question would be do you think say America has been fair in their contract or aids, especially with those string attached, with these aids compared to African nations versus European countries?
I would say the strings attached are kind of the same. That's part of the reason why a lot of Eastern European countries aren't into the fold, especially even those part of NATO, like countries like Hungary are having problems with the American our aid because they have issues with homosexuality and the LGBTQ movement which is tied in some of those aid packages.
Yeah.
So the same effects there. I believe a lot of countries, not only in Africa but across the world, are tired of it. That's part of the reason why globalization and decentralization has to happen, because various countries are tired of those strings attached. So a lot of countries are rejecting, rather do their own path.
Right.
I'm not familiar with the civil war in Sudan. I did know there was a inter-tribal conflict going on in Ethiopia, but that seems to be on the mend, and I feel like that is a great example of decentralization because they had enough time to figure it out on their own without Western powers meddling and probably making it worse.
Yeah. I'd like to also ask, do you think China is playing, the uprise of China, do you think is one of the major causes for decentralization?
Yes.
Yeah?
Because China did what everybody didn't think was possible. The Soviet Union tried to fight us by building up the military, like a physical fight. China's fighting us on the financial and intellectual scales, which is making it difficult, So decentralization had to occur unless we decide to fight China in an open war, but that seems bad business for everyone. So, picking sides, other countries are going to crop up and take their opportunities and really finish off, but decentralization has to occur. China's one of the main reasons of that.
China was one of those poor countries that that was able to build up their wealth, and now they're, like you said, they're all in this actually fighting the war in economics, not particularly boots on the ground.
Not with lead bullets.
So definitely I agree with those benefits. What about do you want to mention any drawbacks maybe that you is there any drawbacks in your thought process that you think of when we speak about decentralization?
Technology, and I believe technology and quality of life is going to slow down. It's not going to increase and extrapolate as quickly as it has in the past. It was easier to bring new technologies to market because you could pull resources from various different countries and assemble things very quickly. With decentralization and globalization both ending simultaneously, it's going to be harder to do those things, right? Just on a global scale, to bring new technologies to the world is going to be more difficult.
Okay.
Just because, it's going to be a slower process. Countries are going to have more autonomy over their resources, so it's just going to be naturally slower. People are going to get paid a little bit more for those natural resources, so things are just going to take longer.
Right. So I mean, when I think about this whole decentralization thing, I'm thinking more of removing power from, say, big corporations, like big businesses or big corporations. And even big government. So, but if we just focus on big companies,
I was thinking about the business aspect. In terms of transfers of power, it's not going to be what people think, right? It's there's a fight right now between governments and corporations to see really who has the power. And I don't know who's going to end up on top of corporations.
I think corporations have been kicking some government's butt though.
Right, so they are flexing, but in America, we even us, we try to rein in our companies, right? Facebook, the conglomerates, Google, Bill Gates, various companies have been called before Congress. On the other hand, lobbying is a thing, and that's basically legalized bribery. So they have so much power.
And that's where these corporations actually buy the government, or at least the politicians, we should say.
But on the other side, that's how it's always been. So things actually change. People forget J.P. Morgan. He gave America a very big loan, helped us get out of the Great Depression, right? And basically owned the country. So are things really changing, whereas that's how it's always been? Rich men buying the government.
Yeah. So with that highlight, once again, when we're talking about decentralization, my hope really is to bring more of that power to individuals. Instead of the big corporation, instead of the Apple and the Facebooks, and because if we look at social media, right? I mean, they're rich because of our information, what we put on there, the individuals, and then they turn around and advertise to us and get paid big money. Have you ever thought about, like maybe some of that? I mean, some YouTube is doing it where some of the ad money comes to us or the YouTuber and the people on the platform. But I think more corporations should be doing that because at the end of the day, it's us, the individuals, who are making their platform grow and profitable.
I don't think people want the responsibility of more power. Right? It's like if you had to choose between freedom or happiness, most people would choose happiness, but really technically supposed to choose freedom. Like, do people actually want that extra responsibility and power? Like, we have power here now, and half America doesn't even vote. Only 30% of Americans vote in local elections.
Yeah,
right? We have power now, we don't even use it. So, when people really want that, I'd say people would rather be more comfortable in that power. Like, if Facebook ends up taking over the government, if they give people $2,000 a month, would people complain? If Google and YouTube say, we're taking over the state of Texas, would people complain if they gave people $5,000 a month? All right, so I know ideally decentralization is a good thing. I feel like that power go back to the people, but I'm not sure the people want it. It's just extra work.
I just want to kind of highlight a little bit on that and we'll move on, but the whole, do you think, like the whole voting, right, people coming out to vote, I mean, I think that the people who don't go out to vote are people, mostly are people who don't have, say, trust within like the government system. So I think, at least for some people that I've spoke to, they almost feel like it's a waste of their time because they don't actually believe in the process. They don't believe that their vote is actually going to count. You know what I'm saying?
You don't believe in the process, you don't trust the government, but then you still send your school to be educated by the government for 18 years of their life. right? So that's what I like. If you can trust the government enough to send your kids to a public school, you can trust the government enough to actually vote, right? At least vote. Even if you don't trust them, at least vote.
At least vote, right.
You never know what happened. You gotta put your best foot forward.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I'm an advocate for voting, and I agree with that. But I'm sure you came across individuals with those same, with that kind of idea.
Oh yeah, most definitely, and I agree with them. But
right, I was gonna say though, I was gonna say I mean, the government has done stuff in the past that took away a lot of trust, say from us and the Americans.
But if you don't vote, you're making it easier for them.
You're making it easier for them, right? Oh, interesting. So you're saying voting is legit, like your vote actually does count. Can you say that 100%?
All right, your vote counts in that it is a form of monetary value, right? You look at individual groups in America, the groups that vote the least get the least, right? Like young people. The government doesn't care about young people because young people don't vote. What the fuck you gonna do? If I don't give you what you want, like student loans not being a thing, do you think they care? Because young people don't vote.
Right. I mean, they kind of they dismissed that whole student loan thing. Just recently, they threw it up basically.
What the hell are young people going to do now? They're not going to vote for Trump. They have no choice. They're going to vote Democrat anyway. So they don't actually care about them because what the hell are you going to do about it? The government really curtails to undecided independent voters all the time because they're the ones that push the needle. It's another reason, part of the reason, racism has systematic racism has parts to do with it, but another reason, they don't care about black people because what the hell are black people going to do, right? We're not going to get anything done. You guys don't vote anyway, and when you do vote, you vote Democrat. So either way, you're going to vote for us. Right. There's no incentive to actually do things. There's actually no incentive to do anything for you.
Right. Well, that brings us to a conclusion here. So we highlighted, we started with Hakeem's life, and then we went into globalization and then decentralization. And we highlighted some pros and cons, say of both. And you guys can jump in the comments and share your thoughts and ideas, and say your point of view as well. And we can keep the discussion going that way. And I encourage you guys to continue to explore the intersection of globalization and decentralization and Africa's future. Thank you, Hakeem, for coming out today and making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, always. Like I said, you're someone that I always looked up to, honestly.
Thank you.
And so as a leader, even in high school and up to now, But yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective with us. It's very interesting always when I hear you speak.
Thank you.
Reading your Facebook posts, sometimes I comment on your stuff. I love the way you think, and I can see like that intellectual side of you. And so that's one of the main reasons I invited you and wanted to sit down with you to have the discussion. And I think it was great. So yeah, thank you for coming out.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
All right, guys. You guys can jump in the comments and continue the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.